Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about the Remington R51. This handgun, the R51 that I'm holding up now, was introduced at the 2014 SHOT Show, and a lot of people were eagerly awaiting the release of this pistol. It's Remington's entry into the subcompact, easily concealed handgun market. But the handgun's nothing new. Right around 1900, the early 1900s, a man by the name of John Pedersen designed the original Model 51, which I have here in my hands. The original Model 51 was chambered in either 380 ACP or 32 ACP. This model that I have here in my hands is a 32 ACP. The new handgun is only currently available in 9mm. Pedersen wanted to take a different approach to handgun design. John Browning had came up with his really famous tilting breech locking mechanism that wound up being used in the U.S. military's 1911 service pistol, and just about every other modern popular handgun today uses that locking mechanism. But Pedersen didn't really know that was going to take place. Nobody knew that locking mechanism was going to become so wildly popular, and he wanted to take a different approach. So he used a stationary barrel, which was also in use by the Walther PPK series of handguns at the time. He used a stationary barrel and a breech lock mechanism that really was different than anything else that was currently on the market. The handgun, I wouldn't say was a commercial success. It was really something of a flop. It was produced from 1918 to 1927. About 65,000 of them were produced in that time period, and rumor has it that a few may have been produced in the 1930s. The handgun sold for right around 15 bucks. So it was a reasonably priced handgun of the era, and this pistol is actually a fairly nicely made handgun. One of the things that the R51 brings to the market, one of the things that Remington is talking about that sets it apart from the competition, is the fact that the slide can be easily manipulated. Now, on this original model, I would say that's definitely true. You can hear it's a little bit gritty sounding, but really, if you could feel this, you would find that it's fairly smooth. Not as smooth as a Browning action, but certainly smoother than the current R51. So let's take a look at the R51. Here's the new handgun. So you can see it looks very similar to the original. It's roughly the same size, although it is chambered in 9mm, so it is just a little bit bigger. You'll notice a little bit more girth here around the handgun. The handgun's made out of aluminum and steel. It seems to be, when you're looking at it, seems to be a fairly good-looking handgun. It has the swoopy lines that are kind of reminiscent of the early 1900s. And it has forward swept sights, which make it very nice. You'll notice it's rounded here in the rear end, so it's definitely designed for concealed carry. You can pull this from your pocket. No clothing is going to snag on it. However, if you want to use the sights to chamber around on the pistol, you can do that by running it down your clothing or off the tip of a boot or something like that if for whatever reason your offhand is disabled. But again, Remington really wanted to make this handgun appeal to those that might not have the strength or the hand dexterity to operate the slide of more conventional pistols like the XDS or perhaps the Shield or something like that. So did they accomplish that? Well, if you saw my original video that I posted of the first R51 that came into my local gun shop, I could just barely cock the thing. I mean, the slide on it was absolutely horrendous. If you dropped the striker and then tried to cycle the slide, you would pull skin off your hands on the slide serrations trying to get the slide to the rear. There's something definitely wrong. Some of you guys said, well, perhaps the gun was taken apart and put together incorrectly because there is an incorrect way to put the handguns back together. And the answer to that question is no, it didn't actually get taken apart. By the time I took it out of the box, I was the first person to handle it. I did check to make sure that it was properly reassembled, but the gun is just flawed. There's something wrong with that particular handgun. Also, the rear sight on it, I could push it right out of its dovetail with my thumb. This handgun I have here is a different handgun, and it seems to be more solidly built. The slide can be actuated. It doesn't stick to the rear like on the original handgun. If I pull the slide to the rear on the original, it would just lock to the rear without pushing up on the slide stop. This handgun definitely seems to work better. Now, Remington saw my original video, and they contacted me almost immediately within 12 hours or so of that video going up and said, hey, that's not normal for our handguns. Could you please send that back, and we'd like to send you a T&E unit, which is how I got this handgun. And of course, I was more than eager to see another example of the pistol. So they quickly got this handgun out to me the next day, aired it, and I've had a chance now to play with it for some time. And again, it's completely different than the original sample that I handled. However, I wouldn't say that it's exactly what I would expect. There are some things about the handgun I don't necessarily like, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. But overall, the handgun seems, externally when you're looking at it, seems to be a very good quality handgun. I don't see any glaring machining mistakes on it or chatter marks or anything like that on it. The only place that I've noticed there are some questionable machining Inside the ejection port here, inside the slide, you can see some gouges, some grooves. It looks like perhaps some unfinished machining processes took place inside there. And that's something I noticed that the original handguns that I handled at the SHOT Show had. I actually blogged about it and said that the interior of the handgun wasn't very impressive. Also, the trigger is a bit odd. It has a very strange trigger. It does reset, but when you go to let it reset, you don't feel it. It's mush. It's like a spring. There's no audible reset and there's no tactile reset. You can't feel the gun reset. So you really have to let the trigger all the way out before you pull it again if you're shooting rapid fire. It just doesn't feel good to me. Also, the trigger moves laterally left and right a huge amount. I mean, it's just unbelievable how much that trigger wiggles left and right. So when you're aiming the handgun and you pulling the trigger, you can actually feel yourself pull the trigger to one side. And again, that's just stuff that doesn't lend itself well to extreme accuracy. Overall, the gun is very easy to shoot, has very little recoil. It keeps that muzzle pretty flat. Now, I have noticed that it kind of hurts the inside of the web of my thumb. I've had other handguns do that before, so it's kind of it focuses the recoil forces right at the very top of your thumb, at the very web of that thumb, and it can get a little bit painful. But other than that, it shoots really, really good, and I can pretty much shoot it all day long. I can get used to that pain. It's not drawing blood or anything. It's just kind of making it a little bit red there. Magazine's easy to load, single stack magazine, and the gun has pretty decent accuracy potential. You can shoot it very quickly despite the spongy trigger. I'll show you that here really quick. And it seems to do a nice job in the accuracy department. Wow. All right, so that was weird. That was a bit more recoil than normal. And the gun didn't even attempt to extract that cartridge. Let's see what happened here. No signs of a catastrophic failure. Okay, that's a problem. Yeah, you're going to have to take a look at this brass casing. It bulged that brass casing really bad. Man, that makes me a bit nervous. Now, I have had the gun not fire. It a couple of times while I've been shooting it. I'll bring it up to fire it, and it'll just go click, and nothing else happens. It fails to fire. It doesn't even really hit the primer very hard at all. I have around here that it happened off camera on. I'll show you a close-up of that primer. But it happens somewhat infrequently, but it still happens, and it happens with a wide variety of ammunition. But that was really weird what just happened. It was a little bit louder than normal, a little bit more recoil than normal, and it bulged the heck out of that case. I'm hoping that that's just a faulty piece of ammunition, and I don't see anything inside the gun that would indicate that there's something mechanically wrong with it. Tell you what, that makes me a little bit nervous, to be honest with you. Waiting for this thing to blow up in my hand. I don't know if it's the gun or the ammo. You guys might get a show here. Now here's the other problem. Now see how it just hung up there? A lot of times, and it does it while it's firing too, every once in a while you get a failure to feed. Even with ball ammunition, it noses that round down into the feed ramp, and it causes a malfunction. If you tap the handgun on the bottom, it'll cause the slide to go home and finish feeding. But you notice it just kind of hung up there when I let the slide go. Kind of odd behavior. Here we go. Hope it doesn't blow up. All right. Yeah, I'll have to show you guys that piece of brass. That's crazy. All right, well, load up 7 more rounds here. Accuracy seems to be pretty good when the gun does fire. And it fires more often than not, but having some issues out here this afternoon. Now, I don't know if the problems I'm having are related to break-in, but this is a T&E gun. It has been fired. Seems like it's been fired quite a little bit before I got it. I've put several hundred rounds through it, and it's still having those occasional failures to feed and failures to ignite. Now, when I get the failures to ignite the round, it looks as though the slide's just not going all the way home into battery. When I pull the trigger, I hear a slight click, and the slide moves forward ever so slightly. So I'm thinking the gun's just ever so slightly out of battery. If it's far enough out of battery, it'll disable the trigger, but it just doesn't seem like the spring has enough spring tension to reliably, even with ball ammunition, reliably get that slide all the way closed. But it's not all that common. It's only happened a couple of times this afternoon. Just kind of hanging up there when it feeds. All right, there's a double feed. Looks like the extractor popped off the rim, and then it tried to feed another round, left the case in the chamber, and then tried to feed another round behind it. Can you see it? There we go. See the round in the chamber, and the round it just tried to feed behind it. Kind of hard to get the magazine out of the gun. All right, now let's just go ahead and load the magazine back up and top it off. So it's having all sorts of weird failures here. And with ball ammunition, that's just not right. Typically, you'll see failures to feed with, certain hollow points, things like that. This ammo I've never had problems with before. Just tried to pull the slide to the rear. You saw it just hang up there. It's nosing that bullet down into the feed ramp. Magazine's fully seated. Yeah, that's just not good behavior at all. Sorry about that flinch. I'm so nervous about this thing blowing up in my face. But there you go. Hear it click? Hear that? I don't know if you could hear that on the microphone. The slide just wasn't all the way home. I pulled the trigger. The slide went home. I pulled it again, and it clicked. I don't even know how that would happen. All right, let's take the round out. Yeah, that case is making me flinch. Wait for the gun to blow up in my hand. Just ever so slightly tap the primer. Didn't set it off. Keep that round. Let's try that again. Now, I have seen some of these problems before. Tactical Existence on their YouTube channel, they had very similar problems with their R51, even after, it wouldn't feed there, even after several hundred rounds to their gun. So I'm having the exact same problems they were having, apparently, with this one. And this is a T&E gun. Another malfunction. It may go home at any time. Typically, I can just tap the bottom and get it to feed. Yeah, that kind of bothers me, to be honest with you. The fact that I'm having that problem with this gun, and the fact I've seen those problems before elsewhere on the internet, kind of wondering if this gun's really ready for prime time or not. And there's another failure to fire. And I can actually see the slide just ever so slightly out of battery. So, yeah, this thing's making me nervous. I'm wondering, because that bulged case, this bulged case, I'm wondering if it didn't go off out of battery. Actually, that's what I'm thinking actually happened. I'm probably going to stop shooting this thing. It's making me nervous. I'm really concerned that this thing's going to blow up on me. Let's field strip the R51. Now, I wish I could say it was as easy to take apart as a Glock or an XD or M&P or something like that. It's just not. Unfortunately, it takes a little bit of practice to master it and to get it to where it's somewhat easy to do. I've only done it a handful of times, and I still struggle with it. But the first thing I want to do, of course, is make sure that the gun is empty, so you can drop the magazine out of the gun. Hit the little ambi mag release there. Drop the magazine out, pull the slide to the rear, Make sure the chamber is empty. Now you can begin the disassembly process. Most guns of the era, and by the era I mean early 1900s, that's when this gun was originally designed, have a cross pin that holds everything together, and this gun is no exception. It has a slide stop pin that protrudes on the right-hand side of the receiver. You can push that pin through. Now, unfortunately, Remington has elected to make that recessed, not just flush, but recessed. So it makes it very difficult to get. You may want to use the tip of a bolt or a tool if you can't do it on your own just by pushing on it with your finger. You'll want to draw the slide to the rear, I should say, to the disassembly notch, which is right there. When you draw it to that notch, line it up with the top of the very end of the slide stop there. See if I can see it. And then start pushing from the other side. You should be able to get that pin to come free like that. And now it's going to be quite a bit different probably than any other handgun you've ever taken apart before. You're going to want to pull the slide to the rear and grab the serrated barrel. See those serrations on the barrel? So you can grab it, get a good grip on the barrel. You're going to want to pull the slide to the rear, get a grip on the barrel, and then just pull the whole assembly apart. Okay? That went smoothly. Sometimes it doesn't go so smoothly. You want to make sure you don't twist the barrel at all. You pull straight off the gun. All right, now that you've gotten the slide off the grip frame, now you can take the locking block, which is right here, out of the slide. To do that, just push forward on the barrel and drop the locking block right out into your hand. It has the firing pin self-contained within it. Now, once you have the barrel forward, just push it forward and lift up slightly to some recesses that allow this bushing to pop out. This is one of those things I've not found an easy way to do just yet. There we go. Get it up like that. Okay. And now you can draw the barrel and bushing right out of the gun. Spring comes off, bushing, and your barrel. The gun's field stripped at this point. You'll notice it does have a hammer. It's not striker fired. I think I mistakenly called it striker fired earlier. It has a hammer in it, and you do not want to pull this trigger. Again, it does not have a manual safety like the original model. You do not want to pull the trigger and release that hammer because it can strike the aluminum frame and damage it. All right, so let's put it back together. Take your spring. There's no right or wrong end to the spring. Put the bushing on it. It only goes one way. Set it into the slide. Leave it sticking up slightly, like that. So you can then put your barrel in, push it forward, and kind of drop everything down inside the slide like that. Now you can put your locking block back in. Got to get this bushing so it moves forward slightly. Take your locking block, drop it in, okay? And now your barrel and everything should just fit nicely like that in the slide. When you go to put it back together, you don't have to pull on the snoot of the barrel. If you do everything right, you get it in there, get everything seated properly in the slide, you can just put the slide on the grip frame and then just draw it to the rear sharply, and it will put the slide back onto the grip frame. Now there is a small little U-shaped spring inside here that you're going to want to pay close attention to. To put it back together, you draw it back to its takedown notch right here. Take your slide stop pin, and you want to make sure that the top edge of the slide stop sets on the top edge of the spring. If you get it below it, which you can do, the gun will not function properly and may not work when you need it. Okay? But it's easy to get back together, or easy to insert that slide stop in the right position. Okay, once you do that, gun's back together, function check, and it's good to go. The R51 is a very narrow, sleek design. You'll notice it's not very thick. I wouldn't say it's exactly a small handgun. It's not exactly a pocket pistol. If you're a big guy and you got deep cargo pant pockets, you might be able to carry it in a front pocket or something like that, but I would say it's more of an inside the waistband type carry gun, or of course outside the waistband. It's no smaller than like an M&P Shield or something like that. But it's very narrow, very sleek. You'll notice that the rear end of the gun is rounded nicely so that if you're drawing from concealment, you're not going to snag your clothing on the gun. However, the rear sight does have a right angle to it, so if you need to, you can drag the pistol down your clothing and operate the slide. It has no manual safety, very clean. No manual safety on either side of the gun. It does have an ambidextrous magazine release, buttons on both sides. So you can drop the magazine simply by pushing the button, drop the 7-round single stack magazine out, 9mm again. And then it just has a single slide stop lever. It's not present on both sides of the gun. It's only present on the left-hand side of the gun. And it also serves your disassembly. So here are the 3 R51s that I currently have in the gun shop. This one is the gun that Remington sent me for T&E purposes after I had posted my original video of this gun with the sights falling out and being very, very difficult to cock. Okay? And then the third gun I have here is a rental gun, another one that had come in that we put up on the wall that customers are able to come up and shoot. And this one has been shot by everybody in the gun shop, and they all have pretty much the same feedback. And what is that feedback? Well, you saw some of that on the range today. Even the T&E gun, which had been fired before Remington sent it to me, I don't know if Remington test fired it to make sure that they were sending me a working gun, or if this was a gun that had been used by another gun writer for an article before they sent it to me. But the gun had clearly been fired before, so perhaps I thought it would be broken in. I've put several hundred rounds through it and have experienced a number of different problems. I've experienced more frequently, surprising, the more I shoot the gun, the more frequent the light primer strikes have become. Originally when I started shooting it, I didn't have that many problems with it, but it's gotten pretty bad. And so the light primer strikes, I think, are coming from the fact that it has very little spring pressure. So it doesn't really have much authority to push that slide all the way home. So the gun can actually, even mid-cycle, halfway through a magazine, it may not close all the way on the next round, and the gun can be fired out of battery. It'll let the hammer fall. In some cases, it won't fire, and that means that you'll just get a light primer strike and have to cycle the action to get back into the gunfight if you were using it for self-defense. And other times I've found it will actually fire out of battery, and you saw that happen today when I was out on the range. And this is the case that I pulled out. There was more recoil, there was a little bit more noise, it just didn't feel right when the gun went off. It didn't pull the spent casing out of the chamber. What had happened is the gun had fired out of battery. So it's just dangerous. When that happens, it makes me not want to fire the gun. It actually makes me very nervous that the next round I'm going to fire is going to blow up in my hand. And so that causes me to flinch. But when you're not flinching and when the gun is actually working, they can produce fairly decent groups. This is a 7-shot group. So, you know, when they're working and when you're not scared to pull the trigger, the guns can actually shoot fairly well. But I had some other problems besides the light primer strikes. I also have problems with this T&E gun malfunctioning on ball rounds, just regular old ball rounds. And that's with PMC, Federal, just about anything. It'll push the nose of the bullet down, it'll hit the feed ramp, and then fail to go closed. It'll happen halfway through a magazine. A lot of times it'll happen when you're just reloading a gun, put a fresh magazine in, you hit the slide release, and it malfunctions. It's just something that does not inspire confidence. It's not a feature I would want in a carry gun. Then the last problem I've had with this handgun, with the T&E gun, is the fact that the front sight under recoil is slowly drifting to the right and my groups are drifting off to the left. You can't move the rear sight or the front sight on this gun by hand like you can with the first gun that I had. But under recoil, that front sight's drifting. So the sights, at least 2 examples of the 3 that I have here, are messed up. Now, on the rental gun, all the problems that the T&E gun has, the rental gun has as well, and everybody in the shop has experienced them. Light primer strikes, failures to feed, all those problems. So, at least with these 2 guns, the problems are consistent. The guns are not 100% reliable. They have problems. And then our first gun that we got in, I haven't shot it. I don't want to shoot it because obviously the gun has a problem with its locking mechanism, and it just isn't safe in my mind to shoot that, and you wouldn't want to shoot it anyway because the rear sight's just going to fall out of the thing. So with all that said, I can't really recommend the $420 R51. I just don't think the gun is ready for prime time. The Peterson mechanism, I think, was a poor choice on Remington's part when they reintroduced their little pocket pistol. They probably should have just gone with a Browning design. Bringing back that mechanism, I think, is the weak point of this handgun. It just doesn't work right. The original, although, does seem to work fairly well. The little 32 ACP original Model 51 that we have here shoots really nice, and it's a lot more reliable than the new model here in 9mm. So the overall fit and finish of the gun is okay. It looks externally very good. It looks very clean. If you see one in the gun shop, you're probably going to look at it and go, wow, that's a good looking handgun. But if they have more than one in the shop, feel the grip safeties. I've noticed between the various pistols, some grip safeties are really easy to disengage, and other grip safeties are very hard to disengage. There's inconsistencies there. Pull the slide to the rear. This one operates very, very smoothly, and that's one of the selling points that Remington was driving home at SHOT Show, is that, you know, people with limited dexterity or hand strength could easily operate the slide on the handgun, but some of them are easy to operate and others are almost impossible to operate, and when they do operate, the slide sticks. So there's just no consistency in the quality between the handguns. The sights are falling out of the 2 of the 3 that we have here. The 2 that we were able to fire, we think somewhat safely, even though the one has gone off out of battery a couple of times. They're just unreliable. So I can't recommend the handgun. If you guys have any questions about this video or any of the problems that we've had with the R51, you can ask those questions on our Facebook page. You can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/militaryarms. As always, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for the subs. We'll talk to you guys soon.